The most dangerous leadership myth isn't that great leaders are born, it's that busy equals valuable. Welcome to week 3 of the Toxic Boss Cost Calculator series. I'm David Pettrone Swalve, founder of Authentara, author of Pirate Jokes Aren't Funny, and your host today to guide you through this part of our 5-part journey exposing the real costs of toxic leadership. For those of you just joining us for the first time today, a quick bit of context. I've spent the last 15 years working with organizations from startups to Fortune 500s, helping them transform leadership cultures that drain resources into ones that actually drive results. What we're covering today builds directly on our previous sessions on turnover cost and disengagement, but this week stands alone. I'm here to expose the productivity tax, the millions of dollars you're hemorrhaging, not because your people aren't working, but because your leadership has institutionalized busy work as a virtue. McKinsey's Organizational Health Index reveals a disturbing truth. Organizations lose 8 to 12% of productivity to leadership misalignment. That's not inefficiency, that's a systemic hemorrhaging masked by meetings, emails, and digital performative productivity. For an employee organization with 500 people, you're paying around $3.2 million of an annual tax for the privilege of looking busy while creating absolutely nothing. And here's the twist. This isn't about lazy employees. It's about leaders who've built cultures where motion masquerades as momentum, activity as achievement. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and type something in the chat. Type a yes in the chat if you've sat in a meeting this week that existed primarily to demonstrate someone's importance. Saying yes to that, and we know for a fact that the revolution isn't coming, it's here. Our employees don't want that. And the first casualty is the busy work theater that you've been funding. We're not just identifying leadership problems, we're quantifying the devastating cost, the financial impact through our toxic boss calculator equation. Week 1, there on the right-hand side, we looked at turnover costs, which was really about toxic leadership that drives your best talent out. It creates a $6 million exodus. We showed you how this wasn't about replacement costs. It was actually about institutional knowledge, walking out the door, taking client relationships, and innovation with them. Last week, we exposed the $2.88 million ghost workforce phenomenon, where people are physically present but mentally checked out. The bodies are in the building, but the minds and hearts have left, creating a zombie economy of wasted potential. Today is about productivity loss. Today, we're tackling the $3.2 million productivity tax, wherein leadership rewards looking busy over creating value. This isn't about lazy employees, as I said. It's about the systems that institutionalize waste as a virtue. Next week, we'll reveal how fear-based cultures silently kill breakthrough thinking with innovation cost exploration. And in week 5, we'll look at the reputation cost, which is the calculation of how toxic leadership creates a talent repulsive field around your organization and forces you to pay premium compensation just to overcome that reputation. These 5 weeks really are 5 costs, and they represent approximately $15.8 million annually for a 500-person organization. All that dollar is hiding in plain sight. In the next 19 minutes, maybe 17 minutes as I look at the clock, you'll discover the exact formula to calculate your productivity waste, why your current metrics are creating the very problem you're trying to solve, and how aligned execution can transform your busy culture into a value engine. We'll finish the week with one protocol that you can implement maybe tomorrow or on Monday that can help you reclaim 7 to 10 hours weekly. The stakes couldn't be any higher. Gen Z and millennials, they're now 64% of the workforce. And they aren't just disengaged by busy work cultures. They're an open rebellion against them. You're not facing a productivity challenge. You're facing a generational ultimatum. And I think we need to start exploring it a little bit more. To understand how we got to that $3.2 million, we have to trace the history of how we actually got here. The productivity landscape has transformed through 3 distinct eras. Each has become more wasteful than the last. The management era, by sight, you know how it was pre-2015. Your presence was measured as performance. We looked for things like first in and last out mentality. Leadership by surveillance, right? The result was rewarding visibility over value creation, which I fear is some of the big drive behind the RTO discussion that isn't being spoken. The second era, 2015 through 2020, we call that the management by digital activity. Emails were sent, messages were posted, documents were edited, but research by Microsoft shows that 67% increase during that time in meetings, along with a 27% decrease in focus work. We had digital present measurement, and it was replacing the physical present measurement. So our result was activity measures that really created and began creating that activity theater. Now we're in I'll call it the value void, the now. Harvard Business Review found employees spend almost 22 hours weekly on low value activities. 45% of the work week is generating noise instead of results. Stanford research shows us that knowledge workers spend around 58% of their day coordinating work rather than doing it. And the result today is organizational systems that measure everything except what matters. You see, this isn't evolution, this is more devolution, and it's costing your organization millions. Now let's put a precise dollar figure on this leadership failure. This isn't, again, about employee laziness. It's about toxic leadership that systemically rewards meaningless motion versus measurable outcomes. You see, productivity loss is really about the average salary times the productivity loss percentage times your company size. McKinsey research reveals that toxic leadership creates an 8% productivity drag, and that's their conservative estimate. So let's run the calculation for a mid-sized organization, 500 employees, $80,000 average salary, 8% productivity loss from toxic leadership processes, and that's the $3.2 million annually paid for your productivity tax. You know, when you start to think about it, that $3.2 million is actually just disappearing while your toxic leaders continue to demand performative busyness. That $3.2 million is evaporating as your calendar fills up with meeting after meeting after meeting. Your inbox overflows with updates after updates, and your dashboards track everything except actual value and outcome. This isn't theoretical, it's actually mathematical, and it compounds. Every week, every month, every quarter, toxic leadership is institutionalizing waste disguised as work, burning through millions while creating the illusion of productivity. So if you've seen this, if you've felt it before, I want you to think about how it really makes you feel on a daily basis. I'd also like to learn about what type of organization that you're working in so I could kind of get a feel for the amount that you're losing. So in chat, if you would, please type your organization's size range, 0 to 100, 100 to 500, 500 plus, over 1,000. Go ahead, I'll give you a second here. Okay, 100 employees? Oh, 700 employees? Well, most of you are losing anywhere from $800,000 a year to $4.8 million annually to this toxic leadership productivity tax. It's not a rounding error. That's not an efficiency opportunity. Again, this is a systemic leadership malpractice, draining millions from your bottom line while simultaneously burning out your best people. And I guess the most devastating part is that this tax is entirely optional. It doesn't happen by chance. It actually happens by choice. I mean, come on. Your busy culture, it's random? No, it's not an accident. It's your systemic cover up for leadership that can't or won't define, measure, and reward actual value. Our concern is that the data indicates that the entire system's at fault. PwC found organizations spend 720% more time tracking activity metrics than they do outcome metrics. Harvard Business School research shows executives spend only 2.1 hours daily on activities aligned with strategic priorities. And as I mentioned, since 2020, Microsoft has documented a 67% increase in meeting time, while meaningful decisions have decreased by nearly half. This isn't inefficiency, it's truly an identity crisis. Your leadership hasn't confused coordination and contribution. They're confusing presence with performance and activity with achievement. The multi-generational workforce sees through this charade. Gen Z, millennials aren't just quietly quitting, they're loudly rejecting leaders who reward performance theater. The Great Resignation wasn't about remote work. Conference Board research confirms it was a mass exodus from cultures that waste potential on meaningless motion. When everybody's busy, no one has to admit that they're actually lost. So here's the pivot point. We've diagnosed the disease. Now let's talk about a cure. The antidote to your productivity tax isn't working harder. It's actually aligned execution. Aligned execution is one of the 8 components of the Authentara blueprint. Aligned execution is the disciplined translation of values and vision into consistent action and measurable outcomes. It actually closes the gap between intention and impact. In chapter 10 of Pirate Jokes Aren't Funny, I wrote, without alignment, good intentions rot into politics and panic. And I'll bet you've seen that rot in your own organization. Aligned execution is the antidote to that rot. When implemented, it transforms 3 critical dimensions of work that you can see here on the screen. First, it converts activity into impact. Instead of measuring motion, leaders actually track outcomes. When teams understand exactly how their work creates value, busy work doesn't just decrease, it becomes intolerable. Harvard Business Review found that companies with high execution alignment are 3.2 times more likely to achieve their performance targets. Second, with aligned execution, it can help you reclaim that cognitive bandwidth. Everyone is overwhelmed, and Deloitte found that organizations waste 30 to 40% of work hours on low value coordination. Aligned execution redirects that time to high leverage work that actually moves metrics. Bain and Company research shows that organizations with strong aligned execution deliver 2 times the shareholder returns of companies with average alignment. And the third way that it transforms an organization and the individual is that it accelerates decision velocity. The Conference Board's research shows that leadership misalignment creates a 9.3 productivity drag through delayed decisions. When priorities aren't crystal clear, decisions that once took weeks happen in moments. Our August 20th certification doesn't just teach this, it actually operationalizes it, because it's not training at Authentara, it's transformation. So here's the point that if you've been with us, that we talk about practice. We believe that to get better as a leader, we have to dedicate our time to practice. So here's a practice that you can go ahead and start to use today to reduce this productivity tax. It's called the Value Alignment Protocol, and it's not theory, it's transformation in 4 days. I've seen this reclaim 7 to 10 hours weekly for leaders trapped in busy work cycles. Step one is the activity audit. I'm not telling you when to do this, but maybe you think about this and you put this into play on Monday. So let's say it's Monday. I want you to list everything on your calendar for that week and identify its specific value. Flag anything without clear value. You'll likely find 40 to 60% of your activities lack real purpose. Step two, it's called the ruthless elimination. Cancel or restructure every flagged meeting. Replace hour meetings with 30-minute meetings. Convert status updates to async communications, and what you'll find immediately is 23% of your bandwidth is back. On day 3, maybe it's Wednesday, try the value first communication. Begin every interaction with, hey, the purpose of this email, call, or meeting is to insert specific value. If you don't have a clear value, don't have the meeting, don't make the call, don't have the email. This alone will eliminate up to 37% of your recurring meetings. Then there's step 4, document the outcomes, right? Find a way to take the time to document one specific outcome created daily, not activity completed, but value delivered, actual outcome. This increases performance visibility by almost 50%. So if you think that you can go ahead and do something along lines like this, I want you in the chat to type which step you think would create the biggest impact in your organization: the audit, the ruthless elimination, the values first communication, or outcome documenting. Okay, I think that your responses are going to tell us a lot about where your productivity tax is the highest, because this protocol isn't about time management. It's really about fundamentally changing your culture and what you measure. So as you start to think about this shift from activity to impact, write a note to yourself about one meeting you already know you're going to get rid of and how it's going to feel to save that time. It's great that individual practice, it really is, and I want everyone individually to practice, but here's a way to eliminate your productivity tax organization-wide. You need to transform 3 core systems. The first one is the meeting architecture, and you've heard me allude to it. You can make immediate impact right now by replacing status updates with outcome-focused meetings. Require clear value propositions before meeting, and implement a no agenda, no attendance protocol. This is your fastest ROI. The second system that you can change in your organization is priority alignment. Your connecting layer that says, hey, every day I'm taking steps to achieve these strategic priorities. So you can replace activity reports with outcome documentation. And you can institute weekly value reviews instead of stand-up meetings to report status. Organization with high strategy task alignment complete 27% more projects successfully and outperform their peers by almost 2 times on shareholder returns. And the final one is the value measurement, your cultural foundation. I've said it once, I'll say it twice. Measure outcomes, not hours. Implement quarterly value audits. Reward results over efforts. Companies that use outcome-based metrics see 40% higher engagement and up to 29% increased profit. That's why it's so important to consider how your organization is leading and how you're developing your organizational leaders. Our August 20th certification dedicates an entire week to installing these types of systems and helps you isolate what produces the worst results, helping you to transform your organization on the daily. Here's my final imploration to you as leaders. Hope isn't a good business strategy. Find out if you're suffering from this productivity task. Here's a question that you can ask around. What percentage of our time is spent discussing activity versus outcomes? Your goal is to go ahead and lower the number of activities and discuss more of the outcomes. Question 2, can team members connect their work to organizational priorities? If they can't, you're hurting them. If they can, you're increasing productivity and being an efficient leader. Your third question is, what's the organization's ratio of meetings to focus work? If 60% of your time is in meetings, you're paying a high tax. Get it below 40%. Don't pay a high tax meeting. For a 500-person organization, a 7% tax is $2.8 million wasted annually. We don't want to waste any money on this. So let's find a way to confront the culture, confront the organization, and put these solutions into play. You can learn more about us at Authentara at authentara.com. But what we know is today we've exposed a devastating reality. Your leadership is creating a productivity tax that's bleeding your organization of millions. You have 3 paths forward. Continue funding it and continue paying your annual tax, or you can implement protocols on your own, maybe not with systemic transformation and maybe with some temporary help, but at least you try. Or you can join the August 20th certification cohort. You can learn how to install the 8 components of the Authentic Leader Blueprint system that helps eliminate productivity tax. As Bruce Springsteen reminds us in the song, The Rising, there comes a moment when we must rise above old patterns. This isn't about reclaiming hours. It's really about reclaiming purpose. Thanks for being here today. I hope you'll join us next Thursday. We're going to tackle innovation costs, that fear tax. So if you want more information on any of this, or you want the slides, drop your email in the chat. I'll send the slides directly to you and the value alignment protocol. As I said, thanks for being here. Thanks for being real. Make today awesome.